took the first vacation of my life last year. A beat-up rebuilt Yamaha Azuma and a foolish sense of optimism carried me across the western United States on an adventure that seriously made me rethink everything I thought I knew about the world. Getting out of Seattle was a total nightmare. Restricted to back roads by a motor that capped at 40 miles an hour, I must have gotten lost a dozen times despite all the help I received from baffled gas station attendants. So I was behind schedule when it came to finding my campsite. More than 300 miles south, there's a free campground, Swamp Wells Horse Camp. It's most often used by horse riders, and boy, can you smell it. That's actually what guided me in the last few miles. There's a gravel road off of a service road, and then a few crooked unpaved paths off of that. The trail markers were all bent, broken, or faded. In the end, I had to follow my nose. I set up my junior scout tent in the fading twilight. Mine was the only one there. I had the place all to myself. After a quick meal of apples pilfered from a previous campground, I did my usual travelogue spiel to my video camera by lantern light before turning in. I'm not sure how long I slept. I know I checked the time, but I'll be damned if I can recall what it was. Something had disturbed my well-earned beauty rest, but I was too groggy to remember what it had been. I sat in a stupor, too alert to fall back asleep, but too sleepy to be totally awake. Something brushed the side of my tent, and suddenly I was more awake than I'd ever been. I had done plenty of camping by that point. I was familiar with the sounds of the usual nighttime critters, from raccoons to coyotes. Nothing had ever bothered me in my tent before, just snuffled around camp before wandering off and leaving me be. From the sound of the footsteps, it was walking on two legs. That was a first. My mind immediately jumped to the worst possible conclusion. There's a lot of conflicting information out there about how to deal with bears, and a lot of it depends on the type of bear. Sitting there in the dark with my heart beating in my throat, I had no way of telling which species I was dealing with. I was 30 yards from a sturdy cement block outhouse that might be better shelter. As quietly as I dared, I slipped my boots on and got ready to dash. The tent zipper seemed impossibly loud in the night as I worked it open centimeter by centimeter by centimeter. I moved agonizingly slowly. Once outside, I craned my neck around to see if the bear, if that's what it was between me and the outhouse. With the incredible illumination of the Milky Way, I could see the campground clearly all the way to the tree line. There was nothing out there. I could feel something watching me. It was like feeling an insect crawl along the back of my neck. There was no logical way for me to know something had its eyes on me, but out there in the dark, in the middle of nowhere, all alone. I couldn't dismiss it. Still on high alert, I crept along and tried not to crunch the gravel under my feet too loudly. The outhouse was still my best bet. The door was propped open by a stone, but inside there was a heavy-duty bolt lock. I would have to spend the night surrounded by the smell of not only horse, but also human poop, but I figured that was a fair trade for not getting mauled or eaten. My hand was on the latch when I heard the awful crunch of footsteps in gravel behind me. I kicked the stone, propping the door open out of the way, and slammed the heavy metal door shut, no longer caring how much noise I made. But whatever was on the other side had thumbs. Something tugged on the door as I struggled to bolt it shut. There was a metal mesh along the top of the structure for ventilation. Through it, I heard the bellows of heavy breathing that matched my own. My phone was back in my tent because I'm an idiot. There was no way to tell time. The same stupid impulse that brought me out there in the first place kicked in. I had to know. Hello. Silence. Maybe they hadn't heard me. And then, hello. I could have shit myself. I was in the right place for it. The voice was feminine, like my own, and the sound of it was a kick to the gut. I couldn't even tell you why it made me so uneasy. The sensation was like when you're walking upstairs and you're expecting another step, but your foot comes down on empty space. I'm sorry, I thought I was alone, I said. I'm alone. Every syllable was jarring. I'm sorry I freaked out. I didn't think there was anyone else here. Sorry, I'm here. You'd think, now that I knew it was another camper, I would have opened the door, but I never did. Some deeply buried instinct kept me from taking my hand off the bolt. You scared the crap out of me. Are there more tent sites out in the trees or something? Something. There are more. Her words made me sick to my stomach. Again, I couldn't have even told you why, only that they did. From her odd syntax, I guessed English wasn't her first language. Do you need to go? Use the bathroom. Because I'm going to be in here a while. That wasn't a lie. I wouldn't have opened that door if it was my own mother on the other side. You need to go. Her grasp of English was improving with every sentence. There was something weird about that. Look, I'm sorry if I scared you, but you started it by creeping around in the dark. I won't come out. Can you go somewhere else? I'll be gone in the morning, I promise. I just wanted to sleep in peace. You need to be gone. I promise you, I creep in the dark. You won't be here in the morning. Fear cemented my mouth shut. The more I spoke, the more she did, and I didn't want to hear her voice anymore. I'm sure that makes me sound like a bigot or something, but I had the feeling I was feeding words to her and the feeling I was not pleasant. It felt like she was hungry for them. The same instinct that told me to keep quiet the first time kept me from running my dumb mouth off again. I was either dealing with someone who was not mentally well or was something else entirely. And there was a threat in her words or the way she spoke them, and I had no doubt she would be able to carry out that threat. I kept my hands on the bolt while they cramped, and the first rays of sun crept sluggishly through the mesh at the top of the walls of my shelter. It wasn't until the sun was strong enough to make me sweat in my self-imposed prison that I felt brave, stupid, enough to speak again. Hello? Are you still out there? Hello? Anyone? There was no answer, which was the best outcome I could hope for. I opened the door. My tent was untouched, at least from a distance. The oppressive feeling of being watched had dissipated. I dressed and broke down camp in record time. My moped cranked to life, but it wasn't until I went to put my helmet on that I saw the footprint. I kicked that rock pretty far. It was close to my bike. Naturally, I went over to it. I had to know. In a clear outline of fresh mud, there was a single print on the smooth gray of the stone. Not human, but a hoof like that of an unshod horse or goat. It was so fresh, so vivid, it hadn't been there last night when I used the bathroom before I'd gone to bed. In the soft mud in front of the outhouse door were more of the same, some of them on top of my own boot prints. If you want to go looking for whatever the hell it was, be my guest. Just be careful with your words out there, because I figured out what was wrong with that voice when I watched the playback of my travel log video. It was my own. I was on my way from Ordu to Kayseri to join my family. I hopped in my car thinking that if I set off at night, I'd arrive in the morning. The Niksar road is pretty empty at night. It's a one-lane road. The road is always green. It's surrounded by forests on both sides. It was around 3 a.m. I saw a faint light ahead of me. A red Ford Focus was stopped in the middle of the road, taking up both lanes. The doors were open, and as I got closer, I saw two people, a man and a woman lying face down on the ground. One bag was open, and its contents were scattered on the road. I stopped about 20 yards away and tried to figure out what was going on. As an active commando, something didn't feel right to me. It looked like a staged crime scene. I looked for a gap where my car could pass and managed to drive through it. After about 100 yards, I stopped to calm down. My heart was racing. I looked in the rearview mirror. The people who were on the ground a moment ago were now standing up and looking at me. My mind was still trying to process what was happening. A moment later, a few more people came out of the greenery. All of these people was just gazing at my car. At that moment, I got so nervous that I stepped on the gas and didn't slow down until I reached my family's place. I don't even want to think about what would have happened if I had gotten out of the car, or if I had stopped a little closer to them. This happened a few months ago while I was in Turkey. I explored most of the country for the last 8 years, but this time I was on a journey to explore the ancient ruins and history. I was in the countryside, in a small village on the outskirts of Urfa. It was late at night, and I was wandering the streets, taking in the sights and sounds of the village. I came across an old house and decided to give it a shot. I made my way to the second floor and knocked. An old man, dressed in worn-out clothes, answered with a sour face. Being the curious traveler I am, I introduced myself and asked him if he had any stories to tell about the village or if he knew any legends. Instead of giving me a direct answer, He invited me in. As soon as I stepped into the apartment, I knew I had made a mistake. The apartment reeked of decay and rot, and the old man seemed to be hiding something. He sat me down at a small table, and I watched as his demeanor changed. He began to rant about dark and ancient rituals, speaking of sacrifices and forbidden practices. He told me about a secret society that still practiced these rituals in the village and how they would stop at nothing to protect their secrets. He revealed that he was a member of this society and had grown disillusioned with their practices. I think he wanted to share the information with an outsider before it was too late for him as well. I began to feel I had made a mistake and knew I needed to leave as soon as possible. But the old man kept talking and I couldn't find an opportunity to excuse myself. I tried to remain calm, but as I realized the gravity of the situation, it was hard to do so. I knew I needed to get out of there before it was too late. I stood up and slowly made my way to the door, trying to remain as calm as possible. But as I reached for the doorknob, the old man stood up and made a grab for something on the table. I didn't wait to find out what it was. I just bolted out the door and didn't look back. I ran as fast as I could. My heart was pounding in my chest the entire way. It was clear to me that the old man and his secrets were dangerous. I was looking for adventure, and I guess I got what I asked for.